Welcome to the Morrison Report. Hosted by Deval Morrison, sales representative for Bosley Real Estate Limited Brokerage. Ms. Morrison has co-authored the best-selling book, Success Today, with Brian Tracy, and has been interviewed on NBC, ABC, and CBS affiliates by Bob Guinea from The Bachelor. Deval, a real estate investor, has spoken to many attendees at her real estate seminars and is currently ranked in the top 5% of agents in her brokerage. Join me in welcoming your host, Deval Morrison.
On today's episode, we have Carolyn Ireland. She's a real estate reporter for the Globe and Mail. Carolyn doesn't realize this, but I look forward to reading her column every Friday in the Globe's real estate section, so I can see what stories and real estate transactions she's highlighted. Carolyn, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Isabel. It's really nice to be here, and thanks for the kind introduction.
No problem. How long have you been with the Globe and Mail for?
I've been at the Globe for 25 years, and I started in Report on Business and worked there for many years, and I was an investing reporter, and then started covering real estate, which was part of ROB at the time. And then the whole real estate section went under the Life umbrella, and now we're part of Life and Arts.
Cool. That's great. Can you tell us a little bit about the columns that you write?
Yeah, so I write a column every week that highlights what's happening in the market. It's called The Next Move because it can be the buyer's next move or the seller's next move, and a real estate agent's next move. It may be a new trend that a real estate agent is using to help to market properties, or a new technique or strategy that they're using. And really it's to highlight and give context to all of the transactions that we hear so much about. And we have done deals in our section that tell how much a house sold for and why it sold. And this gives a whole market context to that so that people can know what's happening in the economy, what people are thinking is going to happen with interest rates. I also put in a lot of opinion from economists and people at the big banks, the pundits. I talk to a university professor at Queen's on a regular basis so that people can understand what's happening in the market.
Awesome. And how's the feedback on your column?
Well, mostly it's really good. And I think that real estate agents appreciate that I'm trying to portray it in a balanced way and tell people what's really happening out there in the market without either a lot of hype or talking it down. I try to put both the bulls and the bears in there so that people can make their own decisions and see that there are various opinions about the market and where it's heading and strategies for buying. Most people seem to really appreciate that.
Yeah, I was about to say I do really appreciate it. It's probably why I look forward to reading your column, because I know that there's sort of other columnists where I know it's going to be all doom and gloom all the time.
Oh.
I find it encouraging because it does seem to be sort of out there in the media that there is a lot of doom and gloom with respect to the real estate market. And, you know, when you're in it, working in it day to day, you sort of see a different perspective. And so I really appreciate that your column shows that different perspective from the perspective of people who are in the market working right now.
Well, thanks. And I think that the doom and gloom comes from reporters feeling like they want people to know all of the variety of opinions that are out there. So I'm sure to agents it must seem like the naysayers or the bears get a lot of ink. But in reality, I think reporters try to present a balanced view of the market.
Right. And how did your column get started? Is it something that evolved that way, or how did it begin? It
really started to be a very small little column that would be 3 or 4 paragraphs that just go with our done deals at the back of the paper. But there were so many interesting things happening in real estate. It just seemed that every week there would be something new to talk about, like when bully offers came along and nobody'd ever heard that term before or knew what they were. There were lots of things to write there. And then there's so many rules and lack of rules around multiple offers too. And some agents are very vocal about that. They think there should be more regulation. So that's a good chance to talk to the Real Estate Council of Ontario and get their opinion.
Yeah.
And their point of view is that it's always up to the seller and that they don't need to regulate it and they shouldn't and can't regulate the seller. So I think it's really healthy to get those different views out there.
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely makes a difference for sure. And, when we look to see what's going out in BC right now, I'm sure that some of the changes that we're seeing out in BC will eventually sort of make their way to Ontario as well, I would think.
That's going to be fascinating to watch and see the impact it has on the market.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And how do you tend to get your stories?
Well, I have a lot of real estate agents that I get to know over time, and if I get the sense that they're going to be telling me what's really happening and that they're honest about things and not just saying the usual phrase like it's a great time to buy or make sure you're working with a licensed realtor. If I can talk to somebody who provides more information and is willing to go deep, that's who I'll talk to. And then as we build a relationship, they come to trust me, and they'll often approach me and say, oh, you won't believe what happened on Manning the other night, or the house that sold on Grace Street, and they'll tell me what's going on in the market. So sometimes I go out for coffee with them. Sometimes it's just a chat over the phone or a quick email, but I find that they're willing to keep me in the loop. And then lots of readers will also send me emails and tell me what's happening with them. I look on Twitter all the time, and if I see something happening, I'll contact an agent or a person in the industry. And go about it that way. Sometimes it's a report generated by one of the big banks, and that will bring fodder for discussion.
Very cool. And then in terms of you put together the Home of the Week article, how do you select the homes and the condos that you put into that column?
Well, we're always looking for something interesting for readers, and I look at that. I want to take the reader someplace that they won't be able to go on their own. So if you've got a very expensive house, say $25 million on the Bridle Path or $65 million in Oakville, any prospective purchaser has to show their bank records before they can even get in the door, unless they have a known agent to vouch for them.
Right.
But not anybody can just show up at those houses, and they certainly don't hold open houses. So I like to take readers into those places, but also I'm looking for a really interesting backstory. It could be $1 million house, which in Toronto isn't much anymore, and but it's a really cool coach house that actual horses lived in at one time, and somebody's converted it into a cool place. Or it could be something that was done by a notable architect years ago. But I was looking for an angle that is going to be more interesting than just talking about the granite countertops or the heated floors in the bathroom.
Right. Yeah, that does make sense. It gets a little boring after a while. Yeah, I had noticed, I think, in one of your recent columns, you had highlighted a condo. I think it was a condo in City Place that a couple of sellers were looking to sell. I think they were either moving out of town or whatever. There was some sort of life change that they were looking to make a move on. And it was a beautiful condo. It looked gorgeous. So I could certainly see why you pick certain places.
Well, that one I found interesting because I liked their story. They were a couple from Vancouver, and they bought off of plans while they were still living in Vancouver. And then they came, and it was this beautiful space. And it was interesting, I thought, and different from other condos. And then it really was like a house in the sky with a long hallway. And then it had these amazing views of the CN Tower and these terraces, and they were up on the 50th floor. So I thought that was, another one that readers might wonder, what's it like to see that condo at the top of the building right next to the CN Tower? And this way you get to see it from the owner's point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's definitely, I would say, a condoization, if it were, of the downtown Toronto core. I mean, recently I met a couple from Vancouver that bought a 6,000 square foot condo on Wellington. And I thought to myself, 6,000 square feet right on King West. I thought that was really interesting. And of course, it was a couple from Vancouver that I guess decided to do that, because I think a lot of people from Toronto, I'm not sure that they would move downtown to, I'm going to call it Party Zone, for a condo that's that large. That's
right. Yeah, that does sound like an interesting one.
Yeah, so I find it interesting that there's all these different people moving to the city that view condos in such a different way. I was working on an open house last weekend and had a gentleman come by. He already had one condo in the building, and he was thinking of buying a second condo in the building so that him and his wife could have a quiet place to be, so their child could be on a different floor with their caregiver, their nanny or their grandmother. And then he was thinking of purchasing a third condo in the building so he could have an office space. And I thought, that's a really different way of thinking of living space, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. So how much notice do you require for people to get their places in the globe?
Well, if it's for a home of the week, often I have quite a few in the pipeline, and sometimes it's weeks before we can get one in. And if it's a more expensive house, often they take a bit of time to sell, so that works out fine. That's another reason why I tend not to do the ones that are more of a midpoint or even a lower price, because they sell so quickly that there's no opportunity to get them in the paper. And sometimes it happens anyway that our home of the week sells before we can even get it in. But we just run the story anyway and just put in a note saying that it's sold or keep that story up to date. But that happened with a condo I did recently that was down in the King West area, and it sold within a day or two of going on the market. But yeah, very often it takes quite a while before we can get it into the paper. And sometimes we'll have one all lined up and we think it's going in the paper, and then something will happen, like when Jack Diamond, the renowned architect, listed his house for sale. We wanted to get that in right away before one of our competitors could get it. And so the one we were planning got pushed back a week, and we got in Jack Diamond's house immediately.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. And have you noticed any trends in terms of the coverage that you're doing with real estate over the last few years or the last few months even?
Well, I notice that every year we think it can't get busier, that the houses can't attract any more multiple offers, or the market can't be more hectic, and every year it does seem to get busier. So that's the overarching trend for years now, is that and it seems to be much more 12 months of the year instead of having a spring and a fall market.
Yes.
So, yeah, the passion for real estate over the years has really been amazing to see.
Yes, definitely. I've certainly noticed that for sure. Have you noticed any trends in terms of the reporting of real estate over the last few years or few months?
I don't feel that the reporting of real estate has changed so much as it's just a matter of trying to keep up with the latest twists and turns. And, you know, I mentioned that bully offers were a new strategy several years ago, and then the strategy switched to everybody was doing bully offers,
right,
and that the offer date started to become irrelevant. So that was another trend. So there's always something new, it seems, happening in the market. The big move to the 905 was also another story that people didn't see coming. All of a sudden there were multiple offers happening out there, whereas in the past they'd only been in downtown Toronto. And now condos in the 905 are starting to become a story. So it always seems to be moving and changing, and people's lives change. So we're always going to see that, I think.
Absolutely. And then what about any trends you've noticed, I guess, sort of in the print medium itself? I mean, you know, there's always sort of the doom and gloom that, print is dying. So I guess, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, definitely we're putting a lot more emphasis on digital at the Globe and Mail, and we definitely have loyal readers who want print, and they're our most loyal readers, and they want the paper every day, and they like the experience of reading the paper. But lots of people never pick up a newspaper, especially younger generations, and they want a really good, clean interface on their phone and or their desktop computer if they're working at an office. And so more and more we're catering to that and rearranging our deadlines and rearranging our editing desks and everything we do within the Globe to move towards the digital world.
Interesting. I guess I'm one of those people, I don't want to say older, but I'm one of those people that like getting my paper every single day. I like the print medium. I like to be able to open up the paper as I'm enjoying my breakfast, my protein shake in the morning. I want to be able to flip through the newspaper. Maybe it's a tactile thing that I like. I like to be able to hold something. I don't want to read everything on my phone. I think I'm noticing more and more I'm getting a lot of my news from Facebook.
Yeah. That's another big driver of news right now. That's right. And they have a lot of clout, and Yeah, and you make a really good point that a lot of people